Hi, my name is Dr. Alyssa Reingold, and I am a clinical psychologist. I work at the National Mass Violence Victimization Resource Center in Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm here today just to talk to you guys about stress and resilience and just a couple little tips on ways to kind of foster resilience that can be used really for anybody. And just bear with me while I share my slides. I promise I won't hopefully bore you too much with my PowerPoint slides. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about stress. I want to talk a little bit about one approach to manage stress, which is using mindfulness, and I'll explain what that is in just a minute. Um, First, I just want to talk a little bit about what stress is. I don't think I've met a single person when I've asked, how you feeling? Do you feel stress? And people say, no, I'm fine. So most people do feel stress in their life, although stress isn't necessarily something bad. It really depends on how you take it. Sometimes stress can help us do better in work, in school, in jobs, in sports, in activities. And so it's not necessarily always bad. Stress, however, is a condition that we feel when our demands exceed or are greater than our personal and social resources, like what we bring to the table and our social support we bring to the table. Okay, and stress is when that is imbalanced, what we bring to the table as well as our demands. So if our demands are higher than that, then we can feel more stress. This is why two people who sometimes have the same demands might feel very differently in those same situations because of their own personal resilience of what they bring to be able to cope and manage that stress. Also, sometimes we as individuals can feel differently in different situations as well. So it's really that balance. So what do we do about it? We can try to remove the demands in our life. We can, not have certain classes, for instance, or not do certain things and decrease those demands, but that's not always feasible. And so then what do we do about that? We're still stuck with some of those demands in our life. Well, then we just need to fill up and build up our coping strategies, what we bring to the table to manage those demands. I do want to kind of touch upon anxiety because anxiety often goes hand in hand with stress. And anxiety is a feeling that we can experience in response to a stressful event. Anxiety can be physical sensations of a fight or flight response, which I'll talk about in a minute, or it can be feelings of worry or apprehension about something happening in the future, or a reminder of something that happened to us in the past. And anxiety is very normal during times of uncertainty. So during this pandemic, anxiety has just been very common for lots of people because there's been a lot of uncertainty. Over the past year, there's been a lot that's been going on across our nation that may have increased anxiety. Political turmoil that we've been having, heightened awareness of social injustices, and even this past week of these two mass shooting events that occurred both in Georgia and in your home state of Colorado. Both those events can bring about other past traumas, other past experiences, and heightened your anxiety. And that's kind of normal experience that people may have. If we have too much of it, it can interfere with our ability to cope. And so recognizing that anxiety, especially when cued by life events and things that are going on in the world and around us in our communities, it can be normal, but it also can be distressing. And so too much of it can be problematic, and that's when we might need to help ourselves, some coping strategies, or reach out and get some help. So I want to talk real briefly about what happens in our body when we feel real anxious. So when we feel real anxious, our body goes into what's called fight, flight, or freeze. You may have heard about that in biology class or other places, but fight, flight, or freeze is a response that we have in dangerous situations. This is totally evolutionary, been passed down. So caveman walking around sees a saber-toothed tiger. The cavemen that are going to survive are the ones that are going to be able to physically run and get out, or fight, or freeze and sort of play possum. Very adaptive in dangerous situations. Our body is preparing itself for that. So we breathe in more oxygen, we take in bigger breaths. Oxygen's flowing to our large muscle groups, away from our extremities, away from our stomach. And so it's really helping get the oxygen where it needs to be able to physically fight or run. Very adaptive. However, when our mind interprets situations as potentially dangerous, when they're not really dangerous, it still kicks in that same fight or flight response. So we take in deep breaths, blood's flowing away from extremities to the large muscle groups. And when we're not physically doing anything, we're not physically fighting or physically running, our body is stuck with these physical sensations. And that's what we experience anxiety. When experiencing heightened anxiety, we tend to notice we have shortness of breath. We feel sweaty. Maybe we even feel a little tingly in our fingertips. We maybe feel stomach aches. And it's because our body is stuck with these physical sensations of this fight or flight response. Okay, does that make sense? Very adaptive, like I said, into dangerous situations to help us prepare. But then when it comes up in things that maybe remind us of dangerous situations, or even we think about and worry about something that negative that might happen in our life, it may trigger the same sort of response. And then we're kind of stuck with those physical sensations. I do have to say that those physical sensations are not dangerous, they're not bad, they just don't feel good. But it's something that if you just ride it out, they will kind of they will go down. Now, resilience is our ability to adapt in the face of adversity or significant stress. So, resilience is nothing extraordinary. It's actually a very common, ordinary ability. We can learn it, we can acquire it, we can better practice it. But I do have to say, being resilient does not mean that we don't feel distress or that we're not experiencing difficulty. So it's not you're resilient or you're stressed. You can be resilient and learn to adapt and cope while still sometimes feeling those demands, feeling stress. Okay, so just wanted to clarify that. So before I get into actual skills, we do have a measure that you should also be given that to help you better understand maybe your resilience, what you bring to the table, coping skills, or things that kind of are already there that can maybe help you manage stress. Okay, and so it's called the Child Youth Resilience Measure, and so you should have it. So just if you want to go ahead and pause this video right now and just take a few minutes to take the questionnaire and then to score it. And how you score it is you're going to add up all the points on the measure. So why don't you just please pause and then score that. Okay. So hopefully you scored your measure and you can look at your results. This is just a snapshot of seeing, okay, what personal and social resources you bring to the table. It's not really measuring your coping skills. It's just what personal resources you might bring to the table that might help buffer you from stress in your life. So if you were to score it and you are above 76 on that scale, then you have exceptional resilience. If you're between 71 and 76, you're high. 63 to 70, you're moderate. And if you're below 63, that means you may not have some of those resiliency factors under your belt, and maybe reason for you to maybe reach out and see what you can do to help bolster some of that. Okay, so this is just a snapshot getting you understanding of where you're at. Now, if you have high resilience, you still might experience stress and you still might benefit from coping skills. So just wanted to kind of to clarify that. It kind of helps you get a sense of where you're at. So I want to take just a few minutes just to talk about mindfulness, because mindfulness is one strategy that you can use to help build. It's a skill that you can build to help manage stress. So before I talk about mindfulness, I want to talk about mindlessness, which is like the opposite of mindfulness. So have you ever sort of gone on autopilot, where you, I don't know, either if you drove home, or if you didn't drive, you're kind of in the car, and then all of a sudden you're at home, from school or from somewhere else, and you make it to home, and you don't remember the ride at all. You don't remember going through stop signs or stoplights. You don't remember any part of the journey. That's being mindless or mindlessness, right? Just being stuck on autopilot. We often go through autopilot, most often a lot during the days. That's the opposite of mindfulness. Um, Mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment without judgment. And that's kind of hard because we're sort of judgy people. And it's learning how to not have judgment about us, our experience, or other people, or the things around us, and just being present. Mindfulness has gotten a big, like, it's been the buzzword a lot lately in and I think it kind of gets described wrong sometimes. So it's not learning how to calm down, because sometimes you might be experiencing anxiety or experiencing stress, and you still can be mindful with that experience. Mindfulness is just being aware, truly in the moment, and being okay with that moment, being aware and present in that given moment. I do have to say, though, the more you practice it, the more you can get better at quieting some of that waters down a little bit. So I'm going to just guide you through a really brief exercise in mindfulness. So I'm just going to guide you through just a breathing mindful activity. That's sort of the start where people usually start when they practice mindfulness. So I want you to just take a minute, and if you're willing, to close your eyes and just take a minute just to focus on your breath. Just notice. Maybe you notice warm air or cool air with each inhale. Notice warm air or cool air with each exhale. And our goal here is not to change your breath, although you might notice your breath changing. That's okay. We're just being present in this moment with your breath, not doing anything else, but just breathing. And maybe you notice your mind wandering, and that's okay. Notice. You can even say to yourself, there's my mind wandering, without judgment, and just gently come back to your breath. And it might wander a few more times. Again, that is okay. Just notice the wandering and then gently return to your breath. Our breath grounds us, sustains us, gives us life. Know that you can always ground yourself by just focusing just for 3 minutes on your breath. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. They were closed and return back to my voice. So we just breathed. That's all we did. I didn't have you slow down your breath or change your breath. All we did was focus on your breath we actually did it for 2 minutes. How do you feel? How do you notice? Feel any different? Maybe you don't. That's okay too. Our goal is not necessarily to change things. However, sometimes people notice when they practice mindfulness, when they practice just taking 3 minutes to breathe, it quiets the mind down a little bit or grounds us a little so then you can focus on what you need to do. Some people say their mind was going a mile a minute and they had a hard time quieting the mind, and that's fine too. Don't let that get you frustrated because it just takes practice sometimes. So that's just one example of a way you can practice mindfulness by just focusing on the breath. However, you can incorporate this in your day-to-day life as well. It doesn't have to be about breathing; it can be your day-to-day type of activities. Um, there are a number of apps out there too, if it interests you to look more into it. Calm is a good one. So I have a 13-year-old and 16-year-old daughter. My 13-year-old really likes the Calm app. My 16-year-old likes Headspace. I like Headspace. There are different mindfulness apps that you can try out and see. One thing about Calm that my daughter really likes is that it has some stories in it, some like sleepy stories when she struggles quieting her mind to fall asleep. She can just listen to those stories and it'll help her fall asleep. Headspace is another app I like. What I like about it is the guys and the girls' accents on Headspace is pretty cool. I think they're Australian accents, but you can limit the mindfulness activity to just 3 minutes. So I like mine short and quick, and that's great on Headspace. Stop, Breathe, and Think is an app that's just that. Just helps you stop, breathe, and think. Nothing else. Pretty simple app. Colorify is just another one of just kind of, can kind of relax you as well. Just a couple options just to kind of give you just a taste of what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is not does not mean you have to meditate. So meditation is a form of mindfulness, but you can also just learn to practice mindfulness in your day-to-day life. And again, it's a way to kind of be present in the moment, aware, whatever it is that you're doing. And that's just one way to kind of help foster resilience, help you manage stress. Thank you very much for your time. I am going to stop sharing my slides. Hopefully that information was helpful for you, and we may be providing some more kind of tips along the way through the remainder of your year. Take care.